Leo joins us on this Monday installment of Hot Stove. Leo, good morning. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. You mean I'm a little older now, but I kind of look the same, don't I?
You do. You absolutely do. But tell us about that episode in your career story when Hank came to you and gave you your opportunity.
Well, it all started in 1978 when I was managing Kinston in the Carolina League. And Harold would know it's a co-op team. So they would option players for me to put together and compete in the Carolina League. Well, the Braves optioned 7 guys to me, and 5 of them were pitchers, and 3 of them ended up in the top 10 in the league in pitching. Well, the word got out to the Braves, hey, how are these guys doing this? Well, at the end of the year, my phone rings. And there's a young lady named Susan Bailey on the phone. And I said, is this Leo Mazzone? And I said, yes. I said, this is Susan Bailey. So I start thinking back, do I know a Susan Bailey somewhere? Or what's going on? And so anyway, she goes, this is Henry Aaron's secretary. And I said, yes. And she says, Henry would like to talk to you. I said, well, absolutely. He said, Leo, how would you like to fly down to Sarasota and look at our pitchers in our instructional league camp and stay with us for a week or so? I said, well, I'd love to. He said, when can you do it? I said, how about tomorrow? He goes, I'll have you on a plane in Atlanta by then, and I'll meet you at the airport, and we'll fly down to Sarasota. That next day, I fly out of Baltimore and go down to Atlanta. And I'm sitting there now, I'm starting to get nervous, I'm saying, man, I'm going to be with Hank Aaron, So I see him at the airport. He goes, hi, come on, let's go. And we get on the plane, and he goes, hey. I said, yeah. He goes, you want a beer? I said, yeah, I'll take a beer. So anyway, we sit there and had a beer, start talking baseball, and then I just shut up. I said, I'm not going to do the talking. I'm going to do the listening, because I was in awe. But you know what? It was just like he'd known me his entire life. And in a matter of a short period of time, I was very comfortable around him. So we spent a week or so in Sarasota, and he wanted me to go over all the pitchers, who I liked, who I didn't like, who I thought were prospects, kind of grade them out. I did that, and he said, we want to offer you a contract to join our organization. And I said, good, what team you want me to manage? He goes, no. He said, we want you to be a pitching coach. And so anyway, I'd had a choice then to go to Lakeland with Detroit and manage their Class A team. But the bottom line was the Braves offered me more money to be a pitching coach than for Detroit to manage in the Florida State League. So that's how it all started. And we became very close after that. And he always he said, Leo, I want to tell you one thing right now. He said, you tell your pitchers we can time a jet coming through that strike zone if we see it often enough. That was his first piece of advice. And we would be sitting behind the batting cages, and he would call. He'd say, Leo, your pitcher's fixing to give up a home run. I said, huh? He goes, yeah. Like in minor league exhibition games. Sure as heck, the next 1 or 2 pitches went out of the ballpark. I said, how'd you know that? He goes, he's in the fat part of the strike zone, Leo. And so therefore, he could see that. And then what we would do then is we became friends, and he would tell me to meet him over at Okeechobee Steakhouse in West Palm Beach. I'd say, okay. And he'd had a private table back in the corner, and he said, would you do me a favor, Leo? I said, what's that, Hank? He goes, go up there and get me a glass of wine and bring it back. He said, because if I go up there, he said, I'm never getting back to this table. So those were little things and friendship things that we got along all through the years. And he was the first one to congratulate me when Bobby took me with him in 1990. But he was wonderful. He says, here's your pitchers. I'm hiring you to take care of these pitchers. How you want to do it is your idea. You do that's why we're hiring you, for you to do it. So I never did get a directive from anybody in my coaching career all those years with the Braves where they said, well, you got to do this with this guy and you got to do this with this guy. I never had that. He told me, these are your guys. You take care of them. And you know what's funny? When I first got to the big leagues with Bobby, first thing he told me, he says, there's your pitchers. I don't care what you do, take care of them. So how about that for 2 of the greatest bosses you can ever have? But he let you do your job. And I was scared one time. I said, my first year as a pitching coach with him, I didn't hear from him for 2 months. So I called up and I said, Hank, and he told me to call him Hank. I certainly would have called him Mr. Aaron. And he said, I said, I haven't heard from you in a couple of months. Is everything okay? Because then you're still young and you're trying to make sure you're a little insecure and everything. He says, Leo, he said, if I had to call you all the time, something wouldn't be right. He said, if you don't hear from me, that means you're doing your job. He said, so relax, you're doing a great job. So after that, it just kind of went from there.
Man, those are awesome stories, man.
You know, Leo, you hit on one thing, too. We had Ralph Garr on the other day.
Yeah.
And Ralph talked about, even to this day with Ian Anderson, that you're not going to the big leagues unless you were ready and you were healthy. And that was kind of what Hank expected of you coaches to deliver. And that was kind of set in place. So I guess that kind of goes back to you got to do your thing. You set that in place for guys to get there. Where'd that philosophy come from, to making sure you're not getting the big leagues unless you stay and you're healthy to get there?
Well, I think what it was back then, Harold, is, you know, you didn't get any directives from anybody saying, well, he can only do this, or you can only, you know, and here's the bottom line. If, as a pitching coach then, with Hank in charge, if your pitcher stayed healthy, you were fine. If the pitchers were having problems breaking down, then you weren't fine. And the bottom line was this: the track record in my career for healthy arms was, just, you know, that was my thing that I was always most proud of. Well, Hank recognized that, and when Hank recognized that, he spoke up for me when they were having organizational meetings to decide who was going to be in charge of the pitching once Bobby Cox became the general manager. And he said, Leo's pitching staffs never break down. Once he put that out there, that cleared the way for me. And, you know, and to have Hank Aaron say that, and Hank Aaron be your boss, and Hank Aaron be Hank Aaron who he is. But, you know, the bottom line that I always loved about him was he treated me like, you know, I was like his son, or vice versa. Like it wasn't that the greatest baseball player of all time, that you would never know that. You would just think he was one of the guys. You know, he called me over one time in spring training, and I'm on field 2. I'm running 2 baseball exhibition games. So the pitchers are taking their PFP, as everybody knows you had to do in those days, in the backfield. And he come running over. He says, Leo, he said, make sure when you have your meeting with your pitchers tomorrow, he said, I want you to tell those pitchers when they cover first base, he says, you got too many of those guys with their foot planted in the middle of the bag, and they're going to get spiked. Tell them to reach the inside part of the bag when they're covering first base. I said,
you know, that's amazing. You know, Leo, we talk so much about, with these Hall of Famers and these great players we've lost, we talk so much about their playing career, and it strikes me, and especially listening to you, especially for somebody like Hank, he impacted so many other people and players after he retired in his role with the Braves. And I think we could say the same thing of Don Sutton. And again, the Braves family lost 2 all-time greats and great people too recently here. But with Don Sutton and his work in the broadcast booth and your work as a pitching coach, I know that sometimes somebody like Don, who accomplished so much, he wants to jump in there and help, and he did at times. Talk about the relationship you had with Don and the willingness that you had to work with him.
Well, once again, there's Don Sutton, you know, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Now, you know, as a coach, I always felt use the tools that you have available to you. I've got a guy that won 300 and some games up top, and there was a couple pitchers every once in a while. One time I couldn't get through to Steve Avery. You know, and I said, hey, Don, I said, can you come on down for a bullpen session and watch Avery while we're down there? He goes, yeah, Leo, I would love to. I said, come on down and watch him. I said, I'm not getting through. There's something I'm missing. And then, you know, Sutton would come down there and watch him throw. Sutton would get through. And it might have been that we were saying the same thing, but his presentation was different than mine. And it was something that Steve could understand. One time I had him spying on Kevin Millwood. Come on down and watch Millwood. He'd come down and watch him, give me a tip or two, and boom, get Millwood back on track.
Wow.
And here's the thing that he told me too, and this is very interesting at the very early in my career. He said, Leo, he said, when you get a scouting report, 2 things, he said. When you get a scouting report, he said, they're all going to say that right-handed hitters like the ball up, out, over the plate, and the left-handed hitters like the ball down and end up, out, over the plate. He said, they never tell you that when that pitcher becomes left-handed, the left-handed hitter becomes a middle in, middle up fastball hitter. They'll never say that in a report. So I started looking for it, right? I never saw it in a report. So I made sure that our advanced scouts would say, would you please tell me whether it's left or right, make the difference instead of just going in general. And then he said to me one time, as our careers were evolving together, he said, Leo, what's the greatest teacher a pitcher has? And I said, well, let's see. He goes, let me tell you, the greatest teacher a pitcher has is innings pitched. And what they're doing is they're taking away innings pitched from the pitchers as this game is evolving.
No,
You know, it makes more sense to me than anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, amen to that.
So let me ask you this, Leo. There's so much here. I want to ask you this about the key to healthy pitching, though.
Right.
When you look back on all the things you developed and the pitching staffs that you put together, and again, Hank's saying if they're healthy, I'm not worried about you. What was the key to keeping guys healthy?
The key to keeping them healthy, Harold, was very simple. It says more often with less exertion. You practice your craft before, in between starts more often, get on the mound more often with less exertion, and the whole key was controlling your effort. And then once you got into the games, then you firmed everything up. The term that you use is firm everything up. And so therefore what baseball has done is now it's left less often, as hard as you can throw. Instead of more often, get some touch on the ball, and you would always prefer to be sneaky quick as opposed to overpowering.
He was, Leo, correct me if I'm wrong, you were always a throw twice between starts guy.
Right.
Make sure you're fine. You don't want to be too strong. Make sure you can dot it by having that command, and you felt like throwing twice between starts was one of the keys.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Johnny Sane was a great teacher of mine, but he had the luxury of being in a four-man rotation. So the baseball world went to a five-man rotation, basically to give the pitcher an extra day of rest. Well, I went the opposite way. I thought there was a little too much rest in between there. But the whole thing was, guys, you had to control the effort. So when they got on the mound, they never went over like a 70, 75% effort, and it was fastball command and changing speeds. And so we were able to do that more often with less exertion. And at one point in time, we had 537 starts in a row in the major leagues, and we missed one start. And then over a 15-year run with Bobby, and he had a lot to do with it too, our starting rotations average making 146, 162 game scheduled starts.
Wow. Good stuff, man. Leo, I don't know if you remember this, but you in this last 10 minutes have said more and been much more interesting than you were in an entire broadcast when you and I worked together in the early 2000s. Young Leo, young Matt.
Look at you guys.
Were you nervous, Leo? Look at you.
Yeah, I was. I was a lot more nervous than the seventh game of World Series. I'm going to tell you that. And I said, well, I wanted you to just keep on talking, and I just follow suit because, that was the first time I ever did that. And I thought, well, there's going to be a big production meeting, and they'll tell me everything I'm supposed to do. Well, we had a meeting for about 20 minutes and said, okay, let's rock and roll. I went, holy hell, what's going on? I'll just follow your lead, Matt.
No, man, you were great. I just remember there were like replays, like pitching replays, and I didn't pitch in the big leagues. I wasn't a pitch coach, and I'd look at Leo and he'd go, I'm like, what do you mean no? You got to say something. Hey, man,
Awesome.
Great seeing you, Leo. Thanks for being with us. Amazing stories with you and Hank. Thanks for sharing some memories with us, and let's do this again soon.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. I enjoy watching you guys every morning.